If you can do the things you don't want to do, then you will get ahead and you'll get to where you want to be and you'll be super productive. If you put that off, then you'll always be stuck.
Welcome to the Mighty Emotions podcast. I'm your host, Giselle. I'm a certified emotions coach, and I teach you how to respond better to your emotions so you can feel better in your life. My mission is to show you how to work with your emotions to become more emotionally resilient. Your emotions are not designed to overpower you. They're designed to empower you. On this podcast, I share what our emotions are, how to understand them and work with them, and the tools you need to reclaim your power and get unstuck from emotional pain so you can find fulfillment in your life again. I'm so glad you're here. Now let's get into the episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Mighty Emotions podcast. Today, we have another guest who is going to be sharing her story with us, sharing what she does with us, and how she helps women. We have Sophie Atten. She's a success coach, and she provides productivity support to women and female entrepreneurs to help them achieving their goals. And the reason I had asked Sophie to join us today is because I know a little bit about her background, a little bit about her story, but she's somebody who I've kind of observed starts over really well, right? Like most of us kind of avoid starting new things, new beginnings, starting over because of change and fear and all of these things. And Sophie's got a lot of expertise in that area, as well as in success and productivity. So I thought, you know what, it would be perfect to have her on and talk about find out what we can learn from her journey. So welcome to the podcast, Sophie.
Oh, thank you, Giselle. Thank you for that very kind introduction. I don't think I've ever been told that I start over so well before, but it's nice to hear. I'm kind of a fan of starting over. I don't like to be stuck. I like to always find a way through. So, yeah, hopefully there'll be some things that I can share that will really resonate with your audience listening today.
Absolutely. And I'm sure those of you listening can hear she's a bit of an accent, which I will try not to copy. I'm like so jealous of the British accent. But Sophie is actually in the UK. And the reason that I know her is because she supported me when I just launched Mighty Emotions. And it was such a help to me. And it helped me develop an awareness of like the online space and everything. And having her kind of be that accountability for me every week was really, really really awesome. So, Sophie, let the people know, who are you? How did you get here? Where do you come from?
So I run a company called the Success Rooms. You can find me on Instagram under that. And I've basically been working for myself for about the last 5 years. So that's since I had my first baby, this is like the story that we're going to come on to is around really that moment of me kind of deciding not to go back to work after the birth of my first child. But yeah, so I'm a mum of two sweet little boys. And and I run this company where I'm really helping women, in particular, like female entrepreneurs, go out and like streamline their time to smash their goals and just stay on top of things, stay ahead of the game. And yeah, that's what I do. It's what I love to do. It's what I was kind of doing for years. And now I work for myself. And it's kind of turned into the perfect life after some ups and downs along the way.
Beautiful. And that is the kind of inspirational story, having to navigate things and having to navigate the ups and downs and then achieving success as your brand is all about. So, when you say that you help women, I know that you didn't start off helping women and this wasn't like always something you were doing, even though like elements of it for sure were. But where did you like start?
So my business has actually changed a lot over the years. I'm having a full circle moment this year where I've kind of gone back to the beginnings in a way. But so I'd never had my own business until I went on maternity leave. And I knew that I wanted a business when I went on maternity leave. I'd always known that because I'm someone who has to keep going and doing things. And I know this is different in different countries, but in the UK, you generally have a year off. And I was like, I was in a fast-paced job. I was leading a team of 40 people. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to possibly just like be at home with a baby. Like, what am I going to do with my mind? I always knew that I was going to start a business, but I didn't know what that was going to be. And so when I had my little baby, I would like take him to the little coffee shops with me and like write in my little notebook and try to plan out what I could do. And then one day after a couple of months, I was like, oh, I really need a really good planner to write all this down in. And I couldn't find one that I liked. I was like, oh my God, this is it. I finally got that light bulb moment that happens in the movies. And so I designed my own planner, and that was actually where it all began. And so I started helping people with productivity from that. So that led on to like a podcast, a course, etc. And then it was kind of on and off because I had another baby. I thought I was going back to work at one point. So this business was on and off for a while. And then around the time when we started working together, Giselle, I put the productivity stuff to one side. And I was like, I actually really want to get back to just like coaching people, which was what I was working as a coach for my previous company. And so I really focused on that. And then did that for a while, which was good, but it didn't feel that fulfilling for me ultimately. So I've kind of gone full circle. I felt stuck again, did a lot of work for a couple of months, and I've kind of gone full circle where I'm now helping the same kind of people, but really helping them with their productivity rather than just general business coaching.
Amazing. Yeah, and I've kind of watched this too since we've worked together, how you've pivoted and how you've adjusted. And that's like really the hallmark of a successful entrepreneur, I think, is being able to pivot and being able to tweak things and adjust things and figure out what resonates and what doesn't. Because ultimately, if it resonates with you, it's going to resonate with the people you're seeking to serve, right? So I love that. I want to go back for a second on starting a business while on maternity leave, becoming a mother. Like, just
Yeah.
becoming a mother for the first time in itself is insane. And
Yeah.
then having a business, which is like another baby, is insane. And I also started my business. For anyone listening who doesn't know, I started it when I was on maternity leave as well with my first child because, like Sophie, my brain is very busy at all times and I needed to stay stimulated. So what was it for you? What was it like for you to navigate postpartum
Yeah.
uh and starting a business?
Well, do you know, everyone's probably going to hate me like listening to this because I found it so easy. I
Beautiful.
didn't. I feel like I want to say, oh, it was such a struggle trying to like weigh this and weigh up that. And actually, my life right now is a lot more of a struggle in terms of balancing out all the things I've got to do.
Mm,
But back in those early days of having a baby, that first year, there's, I don't know, it's different for everybody, but I didn't have a lot going on. I had like a few friends who had babies at the same time. So I'd meet them, 3 times a week, but that's like 6 hours a week.
mm.
Like,
Yeah,
what do you do the rest of the time? And your baby just sleeps, they just sleep all the time. And I was
glorious.
very lucky to have one that did just sleep all the time. So actually for me, I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna make like clever choices. And right now I'm going to be, my baby's sleeping in my arms. I can still use my right arm and watch a YouTube video on how to use Adobe, and then I can still do it all with one hand. So I was like creating my planner through watching YouTube videos and just laptop on the side of me on the sofa while my baby was asleep in my other arm. I'm just kind of doing the work. And I just made things work like that. And I do remember one of my friends who had a baby at the same time, when I announced my business, which was around kind of March time, so our babies must have been about 5 months old, and she was like, I don't know how you do it, like sometimes I don't have date, like some days I find it hard to find time to shower. And I was like, well, to be completely honest, some days I don't shower because it's right, it's 9 a.m, they've gone for a nap at 9 a.m, and it's like, what, I'm going to make a choice, what's more important to me right now, like spending time washing my hair, or do I personally want to kind of advance my knowledge and feel like I'm achieving something in this? And some days that was the choice I made. But I didn't personally find that part of the journey that much of a struggle.
Mm, I love that. And for everyone listening, you should know this podcast isn't like we talk about emotions, but we have a full range of them. We don't need to be only sad or only angry or only struggling. Like we should also be talking about when things feel good and when we feel motivated and energized by things. And that comes down to having our needs met, our need for meaning and fulfillment and purpose. And it felt like, or it sounds like that's what your business gave you, in addition to being a mom. It gave you that fulfillment and that drive. So that's beautiful. And I totally resonate because that's also what I felt about Mighty Emotions. I was like, this just gives me a sense of doing something that combines my gifts and my skills in a
Mm.
way that being a new mother did not, because I had no skills in that area. I was like, what
Yeah.
am I doing? And so it's beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. And when you kind of transition into having 2 children and running
Yeah.
a business, what was that like?
I mean, that was quite hard. So for me, a lot happened at one time. So I got pregnant, and then so I got pregnant, and then a day later, I signed a contract on buying a new house. And then 2 weeks later or something, COVID
Mm,
uh, happened. So they're like pregnancy test the day before the house, and then COVID. So that was one of the times where actually I took a break, because I was like, I know that I can't be working on my business every day while looking after a 1-year-old, feeling like I'm going to vomit all day long. And then like the stress of everything that came with COVID. So I took a little break initially, and then when I had my second baby, I had that same kind of feeling that you were just talking about there, like that need for like personal fulfillment, because even when you're a mother, you don't really feel like you're getting things. Obviously, you're getting
mhm.
like love and all of this stuff from your children and fulfillment in that way, but it's very different. Like it's much more about giving. Um,
Yes.
and I think you kind of need to be a little bit selfish and find out what small things can I do that's going to make me feel like I'm doing something for me. And I definitely feel like that looks like different things for different people. For some people, it might be like they have to do some kind of exercise, or they have to see their mum once a week, or whatever it is. But for me, and I think for you as well, Giselle, it's like I want to be creating something, be like
Mhm.
helping people, and growing something that's completely separate to my children. So actually, when I had my second child, I kind of started that all up again. And by this point, so by this point, I knew I wasn't going back to my first job. So I kind of had, it was a feeling of like hope at that time, and quite a lot of optimism. I was like, I've got like an open road ahead of me now. So let's just get going.
I love that, and how you share so eloquently, and you probably don't even realize you're doing this, but how you talk about, getting your needs met and how it looks different for everyone else. Like, I'm just saying this for the listeners, like, yeah, for me and for Sophie, maybe it is that creating something and growing something, but for someone else, it might be like gardening and growing something there. Or someone else, it might be cooking or painting or whatever it is. It's okay that it looks different. It's just about finding what feel fuels you and what gives that to you. And I also love, Sophie, that you talk about taking a break and how important that is when you know that that is what you need to prioritize. Because you might see Sophie or hear about her and think, oh, she's so driven and ambitious and she's doing all these things, but she also honors, you know, the times when it's like, okay, pushing through right now isn't going to benefit anyone, and taking a break is actually the right thing to do. A lot of people might say, "Oh, don't do that," but that's why I love the power of emotions and the power of listening to yourself, trusting yourself, that like feminine energy of slowing down and nurturing yourself, because it doesn't have to be in conflict with being ambitious and in conflict with going after your dreams. It can actually like collaborate and work together. Um,
Yeah.
what do you think about that in your experience?
No, I think you're so true. And I think the thing that's important as well is that that's something that you learn. Like you're not born as somebody who can or can't kind of honor that need to slow down and to look after themselves. Because I definitely, if you're speaking to me 10 years ago, or not even 10 years ago, probably 5 years ago, you wouldn't have been saying, wow, you're so good at slowing down, because that didn't really exist. I was like, I just want to go, 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 go. And then like, even with, when I was talking about my maternity leave, you get a year here in the UK.
Yeah.
I was like, I said to all my bosses, I'm coming back after 6 months, which, and I do appreciate, like, I know, I don't know what it's like in Canada. I know in America you get like 6 weeks, which
Yeah,
is
in
crazy.
Canada it's up to 18 months actually. We're very fortunate.
Okay, wow, okay, yeah. So you probably know then when someone says like, oh, I'm going to come back after 6 months, that everyone's like, what are you doing? Why would you do that? And
Yeah.
I was like, no, I'm not gonna like be at home. Like, I can't wait to come back and blah, 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 blah. And actually, I really was planning on doing that when that 6 month point came around. It was the start of the summer. So I'd gone like November to spring. And I was like, oh, actually, it might be nice to like have a have a summer of like being in the garden with my baby, because I'd never had that experience yet. So I took some more time off. But over the last few years, I've had to teach myself a lot of self-care, really. And a lot of that has come since being a mother and being like put in these situations where my mental health wasn't very good and my physical health wasn't very good. Like, after my first birth, my mental and physical health was like destroyed. I was like physically and mentally in tatters. So I mean, then having to look after this little baby. So there are times where I kind of had to say, no, I need to take a little break here. And I've learned how to carry on doing that now.
Yes, and this sometimes we learn the hard way. I definitely have
Yeah.
had to learn things the hard way, but when we do know it, we realize how much sometimes we slow down to move forward, right? And we're going to talk about that because you talked about even recently in the past few months, like going full circle, coming back to where you are, like where you kind of started with everything. And
Yeah.
that kind of required you to take a bit of a pause and like step back in order to like launch forward, right? So can you tell us
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm someone who, it's funny because I mean, Giselle, you know this, that I am not, I'm always saying like, oh, I need to work with you because you really obviously are really good at kind of getting deep into people's emotions and helping them feel comfortable with their emotions, which um for a British woman is quite hard to do.
Yeah.
I think that I'm naturally probably quite an emotional person, but I've been brought up to not show those emotions. So it's like, stiff upper lip, like keep calm and carry on. All of those kind of cliches are really very true about the British culture.
Mm,
So I've always been aware of that, and kind of I've been trying to fight against that, and trying to be like, it's okay, like it's okay to feel angry, or it's okay to feel sad, and this, but it's a bit of it's something I'm still working on. I've completely forgotten what the question was. Going full circle, yeah.
yeah.
So I've been becoming increasingly aware when I feel uncomfortable, like when something doesn't feel right, and you would
Mm.
probably have much better language for that.
No, that's perfect language. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So, and I can't be in that state. So, and maybe it's because of this like Britishness, like no, like uncomfortable feelings in my body, like I can't deal with it. But actually it works as an advantage for me, because it means that I have to work through it until I feel comfortable again. So it kind
Hmm.
of, I guess in my younger years has probably stopped me from being in, I've never been in like a bad relationship, whatever. Like if I feel uncomfortable, I'm
Mm.
out.
Yeah.
And when it comes to my work, I just have to do the work to get there. So I was feeling increasingly uncomfortable at the end of last year about my business. It just wasn't giving me what I was looking for. And I literally spent 2 months, every moment that I had spare or like assigned as working time, like I worked 3 days a week, and then bits and bobs, I would just be like writing things out. I had like notebooks full of like spider diagrams, like trying to figure out what wasn't working, what I needed to go forward, etc. And yeah, ultimately I ended up realizing that the topic that I was helping people with just wasn't like lighting me up anymore.
Mm.
And so I worked out where to go with it. And it was like those feelings were gone. They were just completely gone. And so for me, that's my sign that I know I've landed on the right thing. And I just kept going because I kept thinking, I found it, I found the answer. And then I still felt uncomfortable. I still had that icky feeling in my body.
Mm.
So yeah, I would just keep going and going until it was gone, really. And then I've known every day since that it was the right decision.
I love that. And that's why I love having guests on because people can share from their experience in a way that me as like a teacher, expert, whatever, can sometimes
Mm.
make it sound more complicated than it is. I really try to make it really simple. But you described it perfectly. Like you felt uncomfortable. There was a misalignment in your life somewhere. You knew it kind of had to do with your work in that area. So you were focused on that and you stayed with it and you moved through it, and it wasn't like, okay, well, it's been a day, so I'm better. Like it was like, no, I'm going
Yeah,
to stay with it until it's gone and I found the resolution of it, which is exactly kind of what my work is all about, is moving through that and not giving up before you've got into that resolution, which we tend to do because we don't want to be uncomfortable. So it's amazing that you were able to do that and actually get to the place where now you can have the uh, hindsight or the comparison of knowing what it felt like when it wasn't right and what it feels
yeah.
like when it is right.
Yeah, and I think you're so right, because I was thinking as you were talking, it's like fear, isn't it? You know, you get like the fight or flight. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like, I have this feeling, nobody wants that feeling. So you have to do something to get rid of it. So you either like fight, you fight it and work through it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or you say, oh, I'm not enjoying this job anymore, or this job isn't working out for me, this, my own business or whatever the situation is.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna I don't want this feeling anymore, so I'm going to close the doors and go back to whatever I was doing before. And it links very well to success and everything that I teach there, because to be really successful at whatever it is, whatever that goal is that you're trying to achieve, you have to be in that situation. You have to be the one to fight through it, because giving up's not going to get you there. But yeah, you're absolutely right that's that feeling that we're all confronted with at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And then do we stick with it, or do we turn our backs on it? And yeah, we can have
And yes, and it's
massive
absolutely like
consequences.
you tying that into what you do is so important because I think everyone has different definitions of success, right? Like what
Oh,
success
yeah,
looks like for you and I are different. But the principle that you're talking about, being willing to fight for it, being willing to show up for yourself essentially and go after the thing that is going to lead to fulfillment and get curious and do that soul searching, uh
yeah,
it's so key to success, right? Because there's I love when you talk. I want you to talk about this a little bit because you did a reels or you did a stories and then I told you need to make it a reel, where you were talking about goals, right? And how
oh
we
yeah,
all kind of have this different way of looking at goals, but the reality is that success isn't this place we arrive at and then we're done.
yeah.
Like it's an ongoing thing. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I was kind of talking in those videos about how, really, when you're setting a goal, so something you want to succeed at, big or small, people tend to look at it the wrong way. So they tend to look at like what the outcome of the goal would be. So they're like, I want this thing. So for example, I always use like running analogies, even though I don't really run. But
That's fine.
I'm always like, if you want to run a marathon, which is like nothing
You've
to do
never
with me
done.
or my business. So let's say, Giselle, that you wanted to run a marathon. When someone's like, oh, my goal is to run a marathon, that's that feels, it's like out of reach, really.
Mhm.
And actually having that as your goal isn't going to get you to run a marathon. So your goal is to be able to run a marathon. So like your goal is to be able to run what it may be 20 miles in order to then be able to run a marathon. And that's the bit you can control. So my
Mhm.
goal is to be able to follow this training plan that will get me to that marathon day. And so then it's like, okay, so what do I need to actually reach my goal of following this training plan? Okay, well, I need to join a running club. I need to get a training plan. I need to like block the time out in my calendar. I need to get my husband on board. I need to do this and this and this. And then suddenly you've got the steps and you're able to like actually achieve that goal. And at the end of it, great, it's marathon day, and suddenly you're at the starting line and you run the marathon, but that's like the outcome of you achieving your goal.
Yes.
So
The
when
result.
you're focused on, I want to run a marathon, or I want to make $10,000 in my business next month, that's not really a real goal. Like your goal needs to be, okay, I want to do XYZ so I can sign these clients or whatever. So it kind of brings it a step closer and makes it much more manageable and like a human process.
Yeah, and it keeps you in momentum, right? Because if you're, say, not looking at it, oh, as I want to run a marathon, but I want to be able to run a marathon, I want to be able to run this many kilometers or miles or however your measurement is, that keeps you in momentum because, like you said, that's something that is measurable. Like you can achieve that, you can know I
Yeah.
ran this amount, and whether or not you did it in a marathon or you did it on a regular Sunday by yourself, like you can be proud of having accomplished that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I love that. And it goes back to like knowing what success would look like for you instead of
Yes.
using these like arbitrary yardsticks like you see online, like in the case of business that
Oh,
say, I want to make $10,000 months. It's like what,
so
why?
yeah.
Why? Like how would that actually be broken down into a goal? Like if you could explain to the audience, like I want to make $10,000 months. Okay, that's kind of a result, but what kind
Yeah.
of would be the goals behind that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of it's hard to say because it would be so different for everybody else. But
Mm,
like the first off, you want to forget about those arbitrary figures. And honestly, if you're ever thinking of working with any kind of business coach who's always like, oh, do like 5K months with me, and like it's just they're focusing on
mm-hmm.
totally the wrong things. So firstly, that should not even be a goal. But then yeah, you want to be thinking about like actually what am I not doing enough of in my business, like, or what
Mm,
am I finding hard, where do I need to push myself, um that I know is going to advance my situation, my business, or whatever it is. And the thing is, if you ask yourself these questions, if you sat down and I said, right, write down 10 ways in which you are not quite pushing yourself to 100% in your business, it would take you 2 seconds. Like we all
mm,
know what those areas are.
yeah.
We know the weakest areas or the things we don't like as much. Then that's your goal. So whatever it is, like, oh, I don't post on social media enough. I don't show my face enough. I am nervous to do podcasts or to speak live. I don't sell my I can never talk about my freebies, or I never talk about my offers. Whatever it is, like, okay, so here's your things. Start doing those more. Like that's your goal. You do more of each of these things, and then your business will grow and you'll make more
Mm,
money. You'll have more success. So it's just about focusing on the things that you can actually do. It's funny, I was
yes.
talking this morning. So I do accountability coaching one-on-one, which is where I'm just on Zoom with somebody who runs their own business. And it's very interesting because it's at the heart of it. It's like we sit down each week, talk about what you were going to do this last week and how it went. And then we set your goals for the week forward, which sounds very kind of simple, but actually it's a much more emotional, deep process than that. And it looks vastly different to different people I work with. But I was speaking to this woman this morning, and she runs a very big construction company. And she's working on this huge project that's going to take like a couple of years, basically. But she's working with me to help her on this one specific project. And I asked her, because I thought, I've never really asked her this, like, do you have a date in mind for when like you see this new thing opening, like this new project opening? And she's like, no, because for me, that wouldn't motivate me. That would freak me out.
Mm,
I just have to know, like, what do I need to do next? What do I need to do next? And that is who she is. She comes into the meetings with like every little next step for the week written
mm,
out. And we talk through those in detail. Whereas like I'm more of a big picture person, and I would know, like, I would be able to visualize it in my head the day in which that project starts or that part of the business opens. So like you're saying, it's so personal and it looks so different. Like success looks so different and motivation looks so different. But but the main meaty bit, like that gets you there, is the same. It's just like, what do I need to do more of now? Plan to do it, find some way to add in some accountability so you make sure you do it, and then before you know it, like
We've
everything's
achieved it.
happening. Yeah.
Yes. And I just want to touch upon why I love Sophie as a coach and why I would highly recommend her as a coach is that she does take into account the humanness of it. Like it's not just, a lot of people say do this, strategy, but there are reasons, emotional reasons, the feelings, the stories that we have that hold us back from taking the action even when we know we should take it, right? Even if we know we'd like to take it, there is fear that comes up. There might be shame that comes up, and we're questioning ourselves, we're doubting ourselves, the insecurities. So having a coach like Sophie, who is even by nature emotional and who is understanding and who is empathetic, helping you with those goals, you're not going to get a like harsh rah rah coach. You're going to get that push, you're going to get that support, but from someone who's also going to validate where you might be struggling and giving you a space to open up about that. So I adore that about you, Sophie. And I'd love to know kind of what's your self-coaching, because I know all of us coaches, we should have coaches, but we should also self-coach all the time. How you
Mhm.
self-coach yourself went through that as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I'll definitely tell you about that. And just while you were talking, it made me think. I was watching something this last week, and they said, like, to tie into what you were saying there, they were like, well, you have to like get the help to achieve your goals, whatever they are, because if it was just about finding out information, we'd all be millionaires with like six podcasts, which is so
Right?
true. Like, it's not like anything that we're all doing out there in the world, whether it's like going to the gym, building a business, like being a mother, whatever.
Mhm.
uh it's not that like we just need the information, like we need the support to get us there.
Yes.
That's why actually, like the work you do is so important. But people will get information from looking on your on your Instagram page and listen to your podcast, but they'll
Mhm.
get so much more when they actually speak to you in real life,
Oh.
which like it's a whole different level when you're actually working with somebody who will support you with those goals.
Mm.
But yeah, in terms of like self-coaching, and again, I think this looks different to everybody. And I was trained as a coach from a long time ago,
Mm.
so I know the coaching questions to ask. I've quite often thought about finding a way to like get these questions to other people, whether it's in like a free download or something, because I do think if you haven't been a coach, you might not know quite the best questions to ask
Yeah.
yourself. And very happy to help. If anyone's listening to this and they want some of those, just DM me and I'll definitely send you something. But I do two things to self-coach. So one is that I have a notebook that I love, and I sit down and I just write down a question and scribble down the answers. Like I said, I do like 10 spider diagrams a day when I'm in this kind of process, because it's just all about brainstorming and then like
Mhm.
coming back to these things. But I also, and like I still feel embarrassed saying this, I shouldn't really, but I like literally talk to myself on my phone. I will record. I've never once listened back to any of these, but I always record them. And I might just be sat at home, I might be out walking with headphones on,
Mm.
and I will talk to myself. I'll be like, okay, Sophie, so how are you feeling about this thing? And then I'll answer it and I'll say, that's interesting. Now I noticed you said this word. Why did that come up for you? And I'll be like, oh, okay. And it sounds so silly. And like, I hope nobody ever hears these recordings, but it really helps me get to that place of clarity.
Mm.
So I recommend it if you can get
Yes.
a of like feeling silly.
No, I love that. We had another guest on the podcast, if you guys haven't listened to the episode with Tyler, where she talked about, she called it kind of voice journaling. And it is the same idea. So I love that you bringing it up in this context too, because again, it's a basic kind of tool that can really help when we hear it out loud. When it's in our head, it's like,
Yeah.
it sounds different than when we say it out loud and we're like, oh. and we can start to interrogate ourselves and challenge those thoughts, and that is essentially what's going to help us get to that clarity and uncover that. So I love it, and I love it because it's caring for ourselves in and approaching ourselves in this non-judgmental way. It's like I'm just
Yeah.
saying it, and then I'm reflecting on it, and I'm not beating myself up or being critical about it.
Yeah, exactly. And I I can distinctly remember some of these like voice coaching sessions that I've given myself being pinnacles of a moment of change in my life.
Mm,
Like certainly when I decided to go back to doing coaching rather than just like the courses, etc. I remember really clearly that I had that uncomfortable feeling I was talking about. I needed to figure out what was happening next. And I can't, but I didn't have my children. I think my husband must have said, like, go get a coffee. So I was like, great, got a coffee. Sat in the middle of a park. It was a busy park, but like no one could hear me.
mm.
And I sat and did one of those. I thought people just think I'm on the phone.
So, yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
fine. Like no one knows what I'm doing. And yeah, that was like a moment of me making a decision uh to change, to like to follow up with like what was really important to me. And yeah, to kind of move forward.
I love that. So to tie it all together, I feel like what I'm hearing you say, and it again, it ties into my coaching, is that starting over, starting something new really comes from connecting to ourselves and getting that clarity and that self-awareness, being honest with ourselves about what's out of alignment, what's not working, and then being willing to fight for our our wellness, essentially being willing to fight for our well-being and stick through it, work through it, because we're going to be doing it over and over and over, and also
Yeah.
getting support, right? Like I talk all the time, like my coaching isn't about accountability. I'm not here to point a finger at you. Like you can be accountable
Yeah.
on your own, but you deserve to be supported. You don't need to go through it all on your own or try to figure it out all on your own. It's nice to have someone who does know what kind of questions to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think as well, like depending on what the situation is, and I know your audience is probably more broad than mine, whereas mine's just mainly business owners. But you definitely, you can't do anything on your own.
Mhm.
And it, like from my audience, like inside their business, it can be really hard because they might be surrounded by caring friends and family, but they're not really the right people to support you.
Yes.
You need to find somebody who is um like either like a coach in the kind of industry you're in, or a peer,
Mhm.
so someone who actually understands what you're going through. Because I have a lot of people, I had someone in tears with me recently because she was telling me about, in accountability coaching, she was telling me about what she was doing, and then she started crying. She was like, I'm so sad that I can't talk to my family about this
Mm.
because they just don't understand. And that's really hard. So when it's like a business thing, you need to find somebody who understands like running an online business to talk to.
Mhm.
But the other thing I was also going to say is like, because your audience is more broad, sometimes you need that person to step in, might be like a family member. Like when I was going through one of these periods of change where I was not returning to my job after my maternity leave, and it was a long convoluted situation, but the stress of it, I was having to negotiate with my HR people, like the CEO of my business. And the stress of it got so much that I kind of broke down one day, and I was like, I can't handle this. And although this might sound really weird, I'm having my husband take over.
Mm.
So I just was like, I cannot speak to these people anymore. And yeah, my husband went to all the meetings, dealt with all the emails, because I was just on the brink
Mhm.
of like, my mental health had got to a point where I couldn't hear about it, see about it, speak about it. And everyone was fine with that. And
Mm.
I didn't really have any option anyway. I didn't really care if someone was going to judge me, but actually everyone was fine. And yeah, I needed him to step in just so I could completely step back. So yeah, I think you have to just, whatever your situation is, when you need that break, whatever it is, or you need that support, you need someone to step in and help you. You've just got to find that right person and just go with it. But accept the help. Like don't try and do anything in life on your own, because it's just, we're not meant to do that.
Absolutely. And that's the last point I'm going to touch on is that how finding the right sources. I'm going to do another episode about this as well because we think sometimes that, oh, if I need connection or if I need play, if I need whatever, I can just go to this person because they're closest in the vicinity to me, but they
Yeah.
might not be the right person, right? And so we'll end up feeling even worse about it. And so, absolutely, what you said, whether it's in business or in life, is to be mindful that your needs are being met through the right sources, right? So I love that so much, Sophie. Everything you said translates so well. Thank you so much for sharing, your vulnerable experience, the ups and downs, and how, even you just sharing about your husband needing to take over because you needed to preserve your mental health and accepting that help. That just helps other people know who might be looking at you, that behind the successful businesswoman, mompreneur, driven and ambitious, successful woman is a human, right? And
Yeah.
that's what this this is what this show is about. It's highlighting the human behind, whatever your coach, whatever you may be doing to support other people, you're a human too, and you've had to navigate things on your own to get you to be able to do this. So thank you so much, Sophie. Can you just let people know where they can get in touch with you, where they can find you, what you're currently offering?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me, Giselle. It's been a real pleasure. As I say, I'm not really that used to talking about my own emotions. I get them out of other people all the time. So this is kind of new for me. So it's actually been really enjoyable to do that. Yeah, so you can find me best places on Instagram. So I'm just the Success Rooms. And yeah, I help women with their productivity in all kinds of different ways. The main thing I'm running at the moment is this accountability coaching, which I just love doing. And it's hard to put into words what my clients get from it because it's so much more than just talking about what we did last week and what we're doing next week. But I open up for that every month. So the best thing to do is to come and chat to me on Instagram and I can send you to all the right places. Also, I ran a podcast like years ago and I've been talking about it coming full circle.
Mm-hmm.
That's just started up again. So it's called Staying on Top with Sophie, like wink, wink. And that's out now. So yeah, you can find me on everywhere like Apple and Spotify and everywhere. And
I
finally, I'll say, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was gonna say I love the cheekiness of it.
Yeah.
Staying.
I recently did a poll on this like group I'm in. I was like, so does anyone think this is a bit too much? Because I'm gonna like bring the podcast back. And I think one person was like too much, and like 99 people were like, we love it.
Yes.
And yeah, the last thing I'll say is if you go to my Instagram, I've just put together this like bomb freebie, which is where I've interviewed a bunch of really successful entrepreneurs and I asked them what their go-to productivity like secret is, or like the thing they do every day. And I've compiled all their answers and put it into this like really, really great document. So it's there with like all this info in there telling you how other people are getting ahead, and how you can do it too. So yeah, you can also just get that off my Instagram. So hopefully that'll bring a bit of help to some of your listeners.
That's amazing. Absolutely. I'm going to link that freebie below, link Sophie's podcast and her Instagram, of course. Thank you so much, Sophie, for coming on. If you could share one thing, one last message with the listeners about productivity, success, and what that journey is like, can you share that with us now?
Oh gosh, oh Giselle, you're putting me on the spot. I would say the one thing about getting ahead is you have to do the thing that you don't want to do. And that's if you can do the things you don't want to do, then you will get ahead and you'll get to where you want to be and you'll be super productive. If you put that off, then you'll always be stuck in one place.
I love that. Perfectly said. Thank you again for being a guest, Sophie. I hope you guys got so much out of this episode. I definitely did. And if you enjoyed Sophie as my guest, check her out. Let me know. Send me a message. Maybe we'll do a future episode. Who knows? Maybe I'll be on her podcast. Who knows? But definitely connect with her. And I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye bye. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. It would mean so much if you could subscribe, leave a review, share with your friends and family, and let me know what you think by going to my Instagram at mighty_emotions and connecting with me and letting me know what you loved about today's episode. It really means a lot that you support this podcast, and I love coming to you each week with a new episode. So be sure to subscribe, let me know what you think, and take care of yourself.